Chosen one, why have you been waking up at 3:17 a.m. for the past 3 weeks? Why does your chest feel heavy with something you can't name? Why are you here, right now, watching this video when you should be doing something else? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. If this message found you today, the 29th of August, it is not random. It is divine timing. Something ancient just shifted in the heavens. While the world slept, while others scrolled mindlessly through their feeds, you were summoned, not by algorithm, not by chance, but by the same voice that called Samuel in the temple, that whispered to Moses from the burning bush. You feel it, don't you? That stirring in your spirit that's been building for weeks, that restlessness that won't let you sleep, that knowing that something massive is about to break open in your life. The 29th of August is no ordinary date, beloved. It's a sacred threshold, a divine appointment that was written in eternity before your first breath. And if you're hearing these words right now, it means you've been marked, chosen, selected for what's about to unfold. Here's what they don't want you to know. Every sleepless night you've endured, every unanswered prayer that left you questioning God's silence, every tear you've cried in the dark, wondering if you'd been forgotten, none of it was wasted. None of it was random. It was preparation. It's as if heaven pressed pause, stopped the noise of the world, and whispered directly to your soul, "Child, your season of waiting is over. Your time of testing is complete. What I'm about to release through you will shake the very foundations of hell itself." Before we go deeper into this sacred revelation, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and sow that seed of faith. If your spirit feels something stirring already, if every word I've spoken is hitting places in your heart you thought were sealed, don't scroll, don't leave. Write "I'm ready" in the comments right now as a sign of alignment with what heaven is about to pour out. Because, beloved, this isn't just another video, this is a divine summons. And what I'm about to reveal will explain why you've felt like a stranger in your own life, why nothing has satisfied the ache in your chest, and why the 29th of August will be remembered as the day everything changed. The silence ends now. Stay with me. How many of you felt it 3 nights ago? How many of you woke up in the middle of the night on the 26th of August with your heart pounding, knowing something had shifted but unable to name what? How many of you have been carrying a weight in your chest ever since, like the very air around you had been charged with electricity? You weren't imagining it, beloved. What you felt was the black moon, not just any lunar event, but a cosmic doorway opening in the heavens. And while the world slept through it, while scientists dismissed it as routine celestial mechanics, something ancient and prophetic was set in motion. Listen to what the prophet Joel declared centuries ago. "The sun shall be turned to darkness, and the moon to blood, before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes." Joel 2:31. This wasn't poetry, dear ones. This was prophecy. And on the 26th of August, when that black moon rose invisible in the night sky, it wasn't just astronomy, it was activation. You see, chosen ones don't live ordinary lives. We don't experience random events. We live through biblical moments when time itself bends, when eternity breaks into the everyday, when God himself pulls back the curtain between heaven and earth. Abraham experienced it when God called him from Ur. Moses felt it at the burning bush. Mary knew it when the angel appeared. And you felt it 3 nights ago. But here's what breaks my heart. Here's what keeps me awake praying for God's people. Most believers will dismiss what they felt. They'll convince themselves it was just stress, just age, just imagination. They'll go back to their routines, their comfort zones, their safe little lives, never realizing they just walked past their divine appointment. Think about this. How many times in Scripture did God send a sign, a warning, a moment of activation, only to watch his people ignore it? How many times did the children of Israel miss their moment because they were too comfortable in Egypt, too afraid of the wilderness, too attached to what they knew? The book of Revelation paints this picture with terrifying clarity. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with him, and he with me. Revelation 3:20. But notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say he'll keep knocking forever. It doesn't promise the door will always remain available. There's a window, beloved. There's a season. There's a moment when heaven moves, and after that moment passes, some things can never be recovered. This is why the 29th of August isn't just another date on your calendar. It's the response day. It's when heaven looks down and asks, who felt the activation? Who recognized the sign? Who will answer the call? Think of the 29th of August like a divine courtroom where heaven has opened your file and is waiting for your answer. Not your words, your answer. Because God doesn't judge by what we say in comfortable moments. He watches what we do when everything is on the line. You want to know why you've been restless? Why you've been waking up at odd hours? Why conversations feel hollow and routines feel like prison? Because your spirit recognizes what your mind hasn't fully grasped yet. You're living through a biblical moment, right now, today. The same kind of moment that determined destinies in Scripture. But here's where it gets urgent, where it gets personal. The enemy knows about these moments too. He's studied Scripture. He knows when God moves. And right now, he's working overtime to convince you this is all coincidence, all emotion, all wishful thinking. He's whispering, you're too old for dramatic changes. You've missed your season. God uses younger people now. That's a lie from the pit of hell. Moses was 80 when God used him to split the Red Sea. Abraham was 75 when God promised him nations. Sarah was 90 when she birthed the impossible. Your age isn't your disqualification, it's your qualification, because only someone who's walked with God for decades has the spiritual authority to recognize when he's moving again. Look around you. Look at this world falling apart. Look at families destroyed, faith abandoned, hope dying in the streets. Look at a generation that doesn't know God, doesn't fear God, doesn't seek God. And then ask yourself, is this really the time for God's seasoned warriors to sit on the sidelines? Is this the moment for his most experienced soldiers to retreat? Every fiber of your being knows the answer. This is wartime. This is harvest time. This is the moment when God needs those who've been refined by fire, tested by time, proven by pain. He needs the ones who've learned that human strength fails, but his strength never does. He needs you. But what happens if you ignore it? What if you walk away unchanged? What if you let fear, comfort, or the opinion of others convince you to stay small when God is calling you to rise? I'll tell you what happens. You'll spend the rest of your life wondering what if. You'll lie awake at night knowing you felt God move and chose to stay motionless. You'll watch others step into destinies that could have been yours. The children of Israel had this choice at the edge of the promised land. They could cross over or stay in the wilderness. They could trust God's promise or believe their own fears. We know what they chose. We know they wandered for 40 more years because they were too afraid to take the step when heaven opened the door. Stay silent today, beloved, but stay present. Don't let the noise of this world drown out what your spirit is hearing. Don't let the doubts in your mind override the knowing in your heart. Heaven is watching who will endure to the end. God is taking note of who recognizes his movement and who remains asleep. Because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly what heaven is asking of you and why your response will determine not just your future, but the future of everyone connected to your bloodline. The question that will haunt you or heal you is this: when God moved, did you move with him? You know what separates you from everyone else who will scroll past this message? It's not your age. It's not your bank account. It's not even your faith. though that matters deeply. It's your scars. Listen to me, beloved. While others lived comfortable lives, you've carried weight that would crush ordinary souls. You've buried people you never thought you'd outlive. You've sat in hospital rooms holding hands that grew cold. You've stood at gravesides wondering why God took them and left you behind. You've felt the sting of betrayal from children who forgot your sacrifices. You've known the hollow ache of friends who disappeared when your struggles became inconvenient. You've experienced the sharp blade of rejection from churches that should have been your sanctuary. And through it all, you've wondered the same haunting question: God, why me? Why does everything seem harder for me than for everyone else? Here's the truth they never told you in Sunday school. The weight you've carried wasn't punishment. It was preparation. Think about Moses. For 40 years, he wandered in the wilderness tending sheep. 40 years. His Hebrew brothers probably thought he'd lost his mind, throwing away his royal privilege to live like a nomad. They couldn't see what God was seeing. While Moses felt forgotten in that desert, God was forging him into the deliverer of nations. Every scorching day taught him endurance. Every lonely night taught him to hear God's voice above the noise. Every moment of feeling abandoned was actually God separating him from everything that would interfere with his calling. Sound familiar? Consider David, anointed as king while still a teenager, then spent years running for his life, hiding in caves like a common criminal. Can you imagine the confusion? God, you called me to a throne, but I'm living like a fugitive. But those cave years weren't punishment. They were his doctoral program in trusting God when circumstances screamed the opposite. Every psalm he wrote in darkness became light for millions who would follow. Every tear he shed in isolation prepared him to lead a nation. Every moment he felt forgotten by man, he was being remembered by heaven. You've been living your own cave years, haven't you? But here's what will shock you to your core. The very people around you who seem to have it easy, who never faced your struggles, who sailed through life without the storms you've weathered, they're not the chosen ones. You are. God doesn't choose the comfortable. He chooses the tested. He doesn't select the untried. He selects the proven. The weight you've carried all these years, it's been your qualification, not your disqualification. You've always felt different, haven't you? Even as a child, you saw things others missed. You felt things others couldn't feel. While other kids played games, you stared out windows, sensing something bigger calling your name. Your family probably called you too sensitive, too deep, too much. But what they called your weakness, God calls your gift. You can walk into a room and immediately sense the spiritual temperature. You know when someone's lying before they open their mouth. You've had dreams that came true, visions that made no sense until years later, when they unfolded exactly as you saw them. You felt the presence of loved ones who passed on, heard your name whispered in empty rooms, experienced moments of knowing that defied all logic. The world calls this coincidence. Heaven calls it discernment. You were born with spiritual antennas that pick up frequencies others can't receive. This is why you've felt so lonely. You've been like roots underground, hidden, buried, but never forgotten. While everyone else lived on the surface, you've been growing deep, drawing from wells they don't even know exist. The isolation that nearly broke you was actually consecration, setting you apart for something they could never handle. Think about Esther, hidden away in a harem, probably wondering why God allowed her to be taken from everything familiar. She couldn't see that her captivity was actually positioning. Every day of preparation, every lesson in royal protocol, every moment of feeling displaced was God preparing her for the moment when she would save an entire nation. For such a time as this, Mordecai told her, and I'm telling you the same thing today. Everything you've endured, every trial that tried to break you, every loss that left you gasping, it was all preparing you for such a time as this. The very struggles that tried to break you are the proof that you are chosen. Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. How many times have you survived what should have destroyed you? How many times have you gotten back up when staying down would have been easier? How many times have you found strength you didn't know you had, hope you couldn't manufacture, peace that made no earthly sense? That wasn't luck, that wasn't stubbornness, that was the mark of heaven on your life, the seal of the chosen protecting you through every storm, because your story wasn't finished, your purpose wasn't complete. You've been asking God, when will my breakthrough come? But what if your breakthrough isn't something that happens to you? What if it's something that happens through you? What if every tear you've cried has been stored in heaven's bottles, waiting to become healing water for others who are drowning? What if every sleepless night you've endured has been training for the nights when others will need someone who understands their darkness? The season is shifting right now. The tree that's been growing underground all these years is about to break through the soil. And when it does, the world is going to see fruit they never expected from roots they never knew were there. If you feel this describes your journey, if you recognize yourself in these words, whisper, "That's me," in the comments as your quiet declaration. Because what happens next will require you to understand not just that you are chosen, but why you were chosen for this exact moment in history. And beloved, that why will change everything you thought you knew about your purpose. You thought the 29th of August would be like every other day, didn't you? Another date on the calendar. Another 24 hours to survive. But here's what's shaking me to my core right now. The 29th of August isn't about making noise. It's about sacred silence. And that terrifies most people. Why silence, you ask? Because silence is where heaven speaks the loudest, while the world screams its demands, while social media shouts its lies, while fear roars through every news channel and every anxious heart, God's voice comes in the whisper. Do you remember Elijah, this mighty prophet who called down fire from heaven, who faced 450 prophets of Baal and won? 1 Kings 19:12 tells us that after the earthquake, after the wind, after the fire, there came a gentle whisper, not in the chaos, not in the noise, in the whisper. That's where God was. That's where he still is. But here's the problem: you've been conditioned to believe that silence equals abandonment. That quiet means God isn't working. That stillness is the same as being stuck. The enemy has trained you to fill every moment with noise, with distraction, with busyness, because he knows something you've forgotten. Silence is dangerous to darkness. Think about your life right now. When was the last time you sat in complete silence for more than 5 minutes? When was the last time you turned off the television, put down the phone, stopped the endless chatter in your mind, and just listened? You can't remember, can you? And that's exactly why you're struggling. That's why your prayers feel like they're bouncing off the ceiling. That's why breakthrough seems so elusive. You've been shouting at heaven when heaven is whispering back. The 29th of August is God's reset button for your spiritual hearing. But here's what's going to challenge everything you think you know about faith. This day demands discernment. To speak too soon is to miss the revelation. To act too quickly is to step outside divine timing. To fill the silence with your own noise is to drown out the very answer you've been desperately seeking. Listen to me carefully. Imagine Jericho's walls. For 6 days, the Israelites marched in complete silence. 6 days. Can you picture the doubt that must have crept in? The questions, is this really going to work? Why aren't we attacking? Why aren't we doing something? But it wasn't the noise that brought those walls down. It was obedience in the silence before the shout. You see, most believers today have it backwards. They think faith is about making noise, about declaring and proclaiming and shouting their way to breakthrough. But what if I told you that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is be still and know that He is God? What if your silence on the 29th of August isn't weakness, it's warfare? Here's what the enemy doesn't want you to understand. Your silence creates space for God to work. Your quietness opens your spiritual ears to frequencies you've been too busy to hear. Your stillness positions you to receive downloads from heaven that noise would interrupt. But this silence isn't empty. Don't mistake me. This silence is loaded with prophecy. It's pregnant with promise. It's heavy with heavenly activity that your natural eyes cannot see, but your spirit can sense if you're positioned correctly. And here's the shocking truth that's going to hit you like lightning. While others are making noise on the 29th of August, while they're posting and proclaiming and trying to force their breakthrough, you're going to be positioned in the secret place. You're going to be hidden in the shadow of the Almighty. And from that place of sacred silence, you're going to receive what they're missing. Do you understand the weight of this moment? You're not just being asked to be quiet for a day. You're being invited into the same space where Moses heard the voice from the burning bush. The same stillness where Mary received the impossible announcement. The same sacred silence where Jesus withdrew to hear from his Father. This is your burning bush moment, disguised as an ordinary Thursday. But here's what's going to separate you from everyone else who hears these words. Most people will listen to this message, nod their heads, maybe even feel stirred in their spirit. But when the 29th of August comes, they'll fill it with the same noise, the same distraction, the same spiritual deafness that's kept them circling the same mountain for years. They'll miss it. The question burning in my spirit right now is this: will you be different? Will you have the spiritual courage to embrace the silence when everything in your flesh wants to fill it? Will you trust that God is working even when you can't see, hear, or feel evidence of his movement? Because here's what I know about you, chosen one. You didn't find this message by accident. The fact that these words are penetrating your heart right now is proof that you're being prepared for something the majority will miss. You're being called to a different level of faith, a more mature level of trust. Before this message ends, I will tell you exactly what the 29th of August is unlocking for you personally. But first, you need to understand why silence isn't just recommended for this day, it's required. The revelation that's coming will change everything, but it can only be received in the secret place. And that secret place, it's found in the silence. Are you beginning to feel it? That stirring in your chest, that knowing that something significant is shifting in the spiritual realm over your life? Dear chosen one, I need to ask you something that's going to cut straight to your soul. How many nights this past month have you stared at that same ceiling, watching the clock crawl from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m., your mind racing with thoughts you can't silence? You lie there in the darkness, don't you, replaying conversations that went wrong, wondering if your children will ever understand the sacrifices you made, questioning whether all those years of faithful service, of putting others first, of believing God had a plan, whether any of it mattered at all. I know because I've been there. We've all been there, haven't we? That moment when the house is quiet, when the world is asleep, and you're left alone with the weight of 70, 80, maybe 90 years of living. And in that silence, the enemy whispers his cruelest lie. You're forgotten. Your time has passed. God has moved on to someone younger, someone stronger, someone who hasn't made your mistakes. But what if I told you that those very moments, those dark nights of the soul, weren't God abandoning you? What if they were God preparing you? Listen to me carefully, beloved. Every tear you've cried over family members who walked away, every sleepless night you've spent wondering how you'll pay for your medications, every morning you've looked in the mirror and seen a stranger staring back, someone older, more fragile, more forgotten than the person you remember being. Every single one of those moments has been preparing you for the 29th of August. You think those battles were punishment? Let me tell you about Job. This man lost everything in one day: his wealth, his children, his health. His own wife told him to curse God and die. His friends accused him of secret sins. For months he sat in ashes, scraping his boils with broken pottery, wondering why a good God would allow such suffering. But here's what Job discovered, and here's what you need to understand. God never stopped watching. God never stopped caring. And when the trial was over, Job didn't just get back what he lost, he received double. Job 42:10 tells us, "The Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before." Your trials haven't been random, chosen one. They've been targeted, strategic. The enemy has been trying to break you because he knows what God placed inside you. He knows the authority you carry, the prayers you pray, the legacy you're meant to leave. Think about Joseph, 17 years old with dreams of greatness, only to be thrown in a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, forgotten in prison for years. Can you imagine the nights he must have spent wondering if God's promises were just cruel jokes? But Genesis 50:20 reveals the truth. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Every betrayal, every injustice, every moment of despair was God positioning Joseph to save nations from famine. Your pain has a purpose, beloved. Your struggle has a strategy behind it. I'm talking to the grandmother whose son hasn't called in 3 years, the grandfather who raised children who now act like strangers, the widow who sits at a table set for one, wondering if anyone would notice if she didn't wake up tomorrow, the man who worked 43 years at the same job, only to be pushed into retirement with a gold watch and a pat on the back. You feel invisible, don't you? Discarded by a world that worships youth and forgot about wisdom. But here's what the world doesn't understand. God doesn't retire his warriors, he refines them. Look at Moses, 80 years old when God called him from a burning bush. 80. The world would have put him in a nursing home. But God said, "Now you're ready. Now you have the character to handle what I'm about to do through you." Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, 27 years of brutal conditions, of watching the world change without him, of wondering if his cause would die with him. But those prison years didn't break him. They forged him into the leader who would transform a nation. Mother Teresa felt God's silence for 50 years. 50 years of serving the poorest of the poor, while experiencing what she called the dark night of the soul. Yet she continued serving, continued loving, continued believing even when she couldn't feel God's presence. You thought the fire was destroying you, but it was forging you like gold purified in the flame. 1 Peter 1-7 tells us that trials come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes, even though refined by fire, may result in praise and glory and honor. Every health scare that taught you to depend on God's strength instead of your own. Every financial struggle that showed you where your true security lies. Every relationship that crumbled so you could learn the difference between human approval and divine acceptance. Every moment you felt forgotten so you could discover that God never sleeps, never slumbers, never takes his eyes off you. Your scars are not shame, they are signatures of heaven. They're proof that you survived what should have destroyed you. They're evidence that greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. They're testimony that you didn't just endure, you overcame. But here's what breaks my heart. Too many of you are sitting on your greatest testimonies, thinking your pain disqualifies you when it actually anoints you. You're hiding your scars when you should be sharing your story. You're whispering your victories when you should be shouting them from the rooftops. The world needs what you carry. This generation needs to see what faithfulness looks like after 80 years. They need to witness what hope looks like when it's been tested by fire. They need to hear what worship sounds like from lips that have praised through every storm. If you know those scars carry stories, if you understand that your pain was preparation, not punishment type, I survived right now. Let heaven and earth know that you're still here, still standing, still believing. Because what God is about to do through your battle-tested faith will shock everyone who counted you out. But this isn't just about you, beloved. What's happening in your spirit right now, this awakening, this stirring, this divine restlessness, it's not isolated. You are part of something so much bigger than your personal breakthrough. Look around you. Really look. The world is convulsing. Systems that seemed unshakable are cracking. Institutions built on lies are collapsing in real time. Truth is breaking through like water through a dam, and nothing can stop the flood. Why do you think the news feels so chaotic? Why does it seem like everything is falling apart at once? Because it is, chosen one. But not by accident, by divine design. The same God who shook Egypt with 10 plagues, who brought down Babylon in a single night, who scattered the nations at the Tower of Babel, That same God is shaking the systems of this world right now. And you, dear one, you're not just watching from the sidelines. You are part of his strategy. Think about Daniel. While Babylon celebrated their power, while they thought their kingdom was eternal, Daniel saw the writing on the wall. Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin, weighed, measured, divided. That same divine judgment is being written across the systems of our day. The banking system that enslaved your generation with debt, weighed and found wanting. The healthcare system that profits from your sickness instead of your healing, measured and coming up short. The political system that feeds you lies while feeding off your labor, divided and ready to fall. But here's what will shock you to your core: you were positioned for this exact moment. Not by chance, not by luck, by divine appointment. Remember Esther, a young orphan girl who thought she was just trying to survive in a foreign palace, but Mordecai told her something that changed everything. Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? She wasn't just born, she was positioned, strategically placed by the Almighty to save a nation when the moment of crisis arrived. That's you right now. That's your story. You think you've been forgotten. You think your voice doesn't matter. You think at 65, 70, 80 years old, your time has passed. Listen to me carefully. You have been hidden in plain sight, preserved through every storm, kept alive through every crisis, because this generation needs what only you carry. The wisdom that comes from walking with God for decades, the faith that's been tested by fire and proven unbreakable, the prayers that have been ascending like incense for years, creating a spiritual atmosphere thick with heaven's power. While the young ones are addicted to their screens, you know how to seek God's face. While they're drowning in anxiety, you've learned to cast your cares upon him. While they're building their lives on sand, you've built yours on the rock that cannot be shaken. This is why the enemy has attacked your generation so viciously. The loneliness, the health battles, the financial struggles, the family conflicts, none of it was random. Hell saw what heaven placed in you and tried to take you out before your appointed time. But you're still here. You're still breathing. You're still believing. And now the moment has arrived when God lifts the veil and shows you why you had to endure what you endured, why you had to survive what should have destroyed you, why you were preserved when others fell away. The chosen ones are not just surviving the shaking, you are the pillars holding up what's coming next. You are the foundation stones for the new thing God is building on the ruins of what's collapsing. Every prayer you've prayed in secret is about to be answered in public. Every tear you've shed in darkness is about to water seeds of revival that will bloom in broad daylight. Every sacrifice you've made in silence is about to bear fruit that feeds nations. But here's the urgency. Other chosen ones are still sleeping. They're sitting in nursing homes thinking their stories are over. They're isolated in their apartments, believing their voices don't matter. They're going through the motions, unaware that they carry the very keys to America's spiritual future. They need to hear this message. They need to wake up. They need to remember who they are and why they're still here. This is your trumpet call, chosen one. Share this message now, not for me, but as a divine summons to every hidden intercessor, every quiet warrior, every faithful servant who thinks their time has passed. The shaking has begun, and only the awakened will know how to stand. But first, you need to understand exactly what God is asking you to do on the 29th of August, and why your obedience could determine the fate of this nation. Do you understand what's happening right now, as these words wash over your spirit? Do you realize that for the past 70, 80, maybe 90 years of your life, you've been walking toward this single moment? Every heartbreak that nearly destroyed you, every sleepless night when you cried out to God wondering if he'd forgotten your address, every door that slammed shut just when breakthrough seemed within reach, it was all leading here. To the 29th of August, to this sacred threshold. Listen to me, beloved. This day is not just another date on your calendar. This is the dividing line between yesterday's pain and tomorrow's promise. This is the moment heaven has been orchestrating since before your first breath. You see, God works in patterns, and one of his most profound patterns is silence before sound. Before he spoke light into existence, there was silence. Before the walls of Jericho fell, Joshua commanded 7 days of silence. Before Jesus emerged from that tomb, there were 3 days of complete, deafening quiet. But silence in God's kingdom is never emptiness. Silence is preparation. Silence is the deep breath before the victory shout. And the 29th of August, dear chosen one, is your appointed silence. Think about this. Why do you suppose every spiritual awakening in Scripture began with a divine interruption? Moses was tending sheep when the burning bush appeared. Samuel was sleeping when God called his name. Paul was breathing threats against Christians when light struck him on Damascus Road. None of them were in church. None were in prayer meetings. They were in ordinary moments when the extraordinary broke through. That's exactly what's happening to you right now. You thought you were just watching another video, but heaven sees this as your burning bush moment, your Damascus Road encounter, your divine interruption. But here's what will separate you from the countless others who will hear these words and do nothing. The 29th of August requires your participation. It demands a response. You cannot be passive. You cannot be a spectator. Heaven is asking, will you stay awake or fall back asleep? Because I need to tell you something that might shock you. The majority of people who hear this message will dismiss it. They'll think it's just another inspirational talk. They'll nod their heads, feel momentarily stirred, then go right back to the same routines, the same complaints, the same spiritual sleepwalking that's defined their lives for decades. They'll wake up on the 30th of August, exactly the same as they were on the 28th of August. Same fears, same limitations, same cycles of defeat, because they refused to recognize their moment when it arrived. But you're different. You didn't stumble upon this message. You were guided here. The same spirit that hovered over the waters in Genesis is hovering over your life right now, waiting to see what you'll do with this revelation. Ecclesiastes 3:1 declares, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven." Your season of wondering if God still has plans for you is ending. Your time of feeling invisible, forgotten, passed over it, expires at midnight on the 28th of August. What rises on the 29th of August is a different version of you, a you that no longer apologizes for taking up space, a you that no longer shrinks back from your calling because of your age, a you that finally understands that your wrinkles are not signs of decay, they're etchings of wisdom earned through fire. Moses was 80 when God called him to deliver a nation. 80. Anna the prophetess was 84 when she recognized the Messiah. Caleb was 85 when he said, "Give me this mountain." Your birth certificate is not God's limitation, it's your qualification. This is not just a date on the calendar, it's the trumpet before the dawn, the silence before the breakthrough shout. And here's the mystery that will leave you breathless. Those who align themselves with heaven's agenda on the 29th of August will carry amplified blessing, supernatural clarity, and divine authority that will astound even their own families. They will become living testimonies that God's power doesn't diminish with age, it concentrates. But alignment requires action. It demands decision. It calls for the courage to say, "Lord, whatever you're doing, I'm in. Whatever you're asking, my answer is yes." Isaiah 55:11 promises us, "My word shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please." Every word you've heard tonight was dispatched from the throne room with your name on it. These weren't random phrases, they were divine prescriptions for your breakthrough. You were meant to see this, at this very moment, because heaven needed your yes. Not tomorrow's yes, not next week's yes, tonight's yes. So here's what I need you to do right now, and don't you dare dismiss this as optional. Write this down. I choose alignment on the 29th of August. Write it in your journal. Write it on a piece of paper. Write it on your bathroom mirror, if you have to. Then speak it aloud. Let heaven hear your declaration. Let hell tremble at your commitment. Because when you speak alignment, alignment speaks back. When you declare breakthrough, breakthrough declares you. If you feel the fire of God burning in your chest right now, if something ancient is stirring in your spirit, don't you dare keep this to yourself. Share this message. Comment your declaration below. Let heaven record your obedience. Let the cloud of witnesses see that you chose to stay awake when others chose to sleep. The 29th of August is your threshold, beloved. Step across it. What do you do in silence? Do you drown in your thoughts, or do you finally hear God? I need to ask you something that might cut deep, beloved. When was the last time you sat in complete silence without reaching for the remote, without checking your phone, without filling the void with noise? When was the last time you let the quiet speak to you, instead of running from what it might reveal? You've been there, haven't you? Sitting in that chair where your husband used to sit. Standing in that kitchen where children's laughter once echoed off the walls. Walking through rooms that hold memories but no voices. And in those moments, the silence felt like a weight pressing down on your chest, didn't it? But what if I told you that silence wasn't your enemy? What if every moment of unbearable quiet was actually heaven preparing your ears to hear what others cannot? The silence of the 29th of August carries something most people will miss entirely. While they fill their day with distractions, with meaningless chatter, with the endless noise of a world that's forgotten how to listen, you chosen one, you've been trained for this moment. Think about Elijah. 1 Kings chapter 19. He's running for his life, hiding in a cave, begging God to let him die. And what does the Almighty do? He sends a mighty wind that tears apart mountains, then an earthquake that shakes the very foundations of the earth, then fire that consumes everything in its path. But Scripture tells us God wasn't in any of those dramatic displays. Instead, God came in what the Bible calls a still small voice, a whisper, a sound so quiet that only someone who had learned to listen in silence could hear it. You've been in that cave, haven't you? You've felt forgotten, abandoned, ready to give up. The world around you has been full of noise, doctor's appointments, family drama, financial worries, but in the deepest part of your struggle, in those moments when everything went quiet, that's when you heard it. That whisper, that knowing, that presence that said, "I'm still here." That wasn't coincidence, dear one. That was training. Every empty evening you've endured prepared you for this. Every silent meal at a table meant for two equipped you for what's coming. Every hour you spent alone, wondering if anyone remembered your name, was God teaching you to recognize His voice above the chaos of the world. The silence of the 29th of August is like soil, hidden, heavy, dark, but within it, seeds are breaking open. You see, most people fear silence because silence reveals truth. It strips away the masks, the pretenses, the comfortable lies we tell ourselves. But you who have sat with grief, who have walked through valleys where no voice echoed back, who have learned that God's presence doesn't always announce itself with trumpets, you understand something the world has forgotten. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is fullness, waiting to be recognized. Psalm 46:10 commands us, "Be still and know that I am God." Not be busy and know, not be distracted and know, be still. In Hebrew, that word still means to literally let go, to release your grip, to stop striving. And in that releasing, in that sacred quiet, the knowing comes. But here's what breaks my heart. So many of you have been convinced that your season of silence means you've been sidelined, that your quiet years mean God is done with you, that the empty rooms and slower pace mean your time of purpose has passed. That is a lie from the pit of hell. Your silence wasn't retirement from God's plan. It was enrollment in His advanced course. While others were building careers and chasing dreams, you were learning to hear heaven's heartbeat. While they were accumulating noise, you were accumulating wisdom. And now, as the 29th of August approaches, that silence is about to become your greatest weapon. Heaven does its greatest work when the earth is still. Look at creation itself. Genesis tells us that before God spoke light into existence, there was silence. Before the first word of divine power echoed through eternity, there was perfect, expectant quiet, and in that silence, everything was possible. Your silence has been preparing you for a word from God that will shatter every limitation the world has placed on your life. Every evening you spent alone wasn't isolation, it was incubation. Every moment of feeling forgotten wasn't abandonment, it was appointment. But I need to warn you about something urgent. The 29th of August isn't just about receiving that word, it's about being ready to act on it when it comes. And action in the spirit realm often begins with continued silence in the natural realm. This is why staying silent on the 29th of August isn't passive, it's powerful. It's not withdrawal, it's warfare. While others fill the air with empty words and meaningless noise, you'll be positioned to hear what heaven is saying and to respond with precision instead of panic. The enemy fears your silence because he knows what you've learned in it. He knows that when you stop reacting to his distractions, when you stop responding to his provocations, when you simply rest in the quiet confidence of someone who has learned to hear God's voice above the storm, his power over you crumbles. Your silent years weren't wasted years. They were weighted years, weighted with preparation, with purpose, with the kind of spiritual authority that only comes from learning to be still in God's presence. And now, as we stand on the threshold of the 29th of August, I need you to understand something that will determine whether you receive what God wants to release or whether you miss it entirely because you couldn't resist the urge to fill the silence with your own voice. But first, you need to know why this particular silence, the 29th of August silence, carries a weight that could change everything about your remaining years on this earth. You know what breaks my heart? It's the way you've been carrying shame for 70, 80, 90 years, believing your mistakes define you, believing your failures disqualified you from God's purpose. Let me tell you something that's going to shatter every lie the enemy has whispered in your ear about your past. Every tear you cried over that marriage that ended in betrayal. Every sleepless night wondering if you failed as a parent. Every regret that visits you at 3 a.m. when the house is quiet and the memories are loud, none of it has been wasted. Not one single moment. You think God didn't see when your husband walked out after 37 years? When your children stopped calling? When the business you built with your own hands crumbled to dust? When the doctor gave you news that changed everything? He saw it all, and he was taking notes. Think about Joseph. 17 years old, dreaming of greatness, only to be thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold like cattle, falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, forgotten in prison for years while his dreams seemed to rot in darkness. But Genesis 50:20 reveals the secret. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Every betrayal was positioning. Every injustice was preparation. Every tear was liquid prophecy being poured into the foundation of his destiny. And you, O chosen one, you've been living Joseph's story without even knowing it. Remember Job, the man who lost everything in one day, his children, his wealth, his health, even his wife's support. Sitting in ashes, scraping his sores with broken pottery, wondering why a good God would allow such devastation. But Job 42:10 tells us the rest. After Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. Twice as much. That's not just restoration, that's divine mathematics. That's God's way of saying, the pain you endured just earned you a double portion. Your pain wasn't punishment, it was preparation for unprecedented blessing. But why silence now? Why the 29th of August? Why not when you were 40 and still had energy? Why not when you were 50 and still had time? Because, dear one, some assignments require seasoned vessels. Some missions demand warriors who've been tested by fire and refuse to bow. Some purposes can only be carried by hearts that have been broken and mended by the Master's hands. David understood this. Before he wore a crown, he wore caves. Before he ruled a kingdom, he ran for his life. 1 Samuel tells us he spent years hiding from King Saul, living in the wilderness, wondering if God had forgotten the promise whispered over him as a shepherd boy. But those cave years weren't detours, they were doctoral programs in dependence on God. Every psalm he wrote in darkness became light for millions who would follow. Every tear he shed in exile became liquid worship that still echoes through eternity. Your scars are not evidence of defeat. They are proof that you've been preserved for this very silence. Like rings in a tree trunk, your past has marked you. But those rings aren't signs of damage, they're evidence of survival through every storm. Each ring represents a season you endured, a trial you overcame, a year you chose to keep growing when cutting down would have been easier. The storms that should have uprooted you only drove your roots deeper. The winds that should have broken you only made you stronger. The droughts that should have killed you only taught you to find water in impossible places. But why haven't you been used yet? Why do you feel forgotten while others half your age are being promoted, blessed, elevated? Because God doesn't promote the untested. He doesn't trust his greatest assignments to people who crumble under pressure. He waits, he watches, he allows the fire to burn until only pure gold remains. That divorce that nearly destroyed you. It taught you the difference between human love and divine love. That financial ruin that left you eating beans from a can. It proved that your security comes from heaven's bank, not earth's economy. That diagnosis that terrified you, it revealed that your hope was built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. Every wound became a window, every scar became a sermon, every failure became a foundation for someone else's faith. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to understand. The 29th of August isn't just another day of remembering your past. It's the day your past finally makes sense. It's the day God pulls back the curtain and shows you why you had to walk through hell to get to your promised land. The silence he's calling you to isn't punishment for your failures. It's preparation for your finest hour. Moses was 80 when God called him from the burning bush. 80. The world would have put him in a nursing home. But God said, "Now you're ready. Now you understand suffering. Now you know what it means to need me completely. Your age isn't your disqualification, it's your diploma. Your wrinkles aren't marks of decay, they're etchings of wisdom. Your slower steps don't signal weakness. They reveal the measured walk of someone who's learned not to run ahead of God." But why silence specifically? Why not speaking? Why not action? Why not movement? Because in a world that never stops talking, silence is the most powerful sound. In a generation addicted to noise, stillness becomes supernatural. In an age of endless chatter, the person who knows when to be quiet carries the authority of eternity. Your silence on the 29th of August isn't passive, it's prophetic. It's not withdrawal, it's warfare. It's not giving up, it's gearing up for what heaven is about to release through your surrendered life. But what exactly is God preparing to birth through this silence? What is coming that requires such sacred stillness from his seasoned saints? You thought the heaviness in your chest was just stress, didn't you? You blamed it on the news, on your health, on getting older. But what if I told you that weight you've been carrying, that suffocating pressure that makes you want to crawl back into bed at 2 p.m.? What if that's not depression at all? What if it's warfare? Listen to me, chosen one. When heaven speaks, hell resists. That is exactly why you've felt unusual heaviness this week. The distractions that keep pulling your mind away from prayer. The sudden doubts that whisper God has forgotten you right when you're about to break through. The exhaustion that hits you like a freight train every time you try to seek his face. This is not coincidence. This is spiritual combat. You see, the enemy knows something about the 29th of August that most believers don't understand. He knows that silence, true, sacred silence before God, is the most dangerous weapon in the arsenal of heaven. When you become still, when you quiet the noise of this world, when you position yourself to hear the whisper of the Almighty, hell panics, because in that silence, destinies shift, prayers break through, miracles are birthed. That's why every force of darkness has been assigned to keep you distracted, keep you heavy, keep you questioning whether God even cares about your situation anymore. They know that if you actually embrace the silence of the 29th of August, everything they've worked to keep locked in your life will come crashing down. Think about Daniel, beloved. For 21 days, he prayed and fasted, seeking God's face. 21 days of what seemed like heaven's silence. But Daniel 10:12-13 reveals the shocking truth. Do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Do you understand what this means? From the very first prayer, heaven heard Daniel. The angel was dispatched immediately, but for 21 days, there was a battle raging in the unseen realm. Angels and demons locked in cosmic warfare over one man's breakthrough. The silence wasn't God ignoring Daniel. The silence was the sound of heaven fighting for Daniel's future. And right now, as the 29th of August approaches, the same battle is raging over your life. The silence you're about to enter is not empty air. It's a battlefield where angels and demons wrestle over your destiny, your breakthrough, your miracle. This is why you've been under such intense spiritual pressure. This is why everything seems to be going wrong right when you're trying to draw closer to God. This is why your mind has been flooded with thoughts of doubt, fear, and discouragement. The enemy sees what's coming. He sees the breakthrough that's about to manifest in your life. He sees the doors that are about to open. He sees the healing that's about to flow through your body. He sees the financial miracle that's about to shift your entire family's trajectory. And he's throwing everything he has at you to make you give up one day before your deliverance arrives. But here's what hell doesn't want you to know. Their panic is proof of your proximity to victory. The intensity of the attack reveals the magnitude of what you're about to receive. When Pharaoh's army chased the Israelites to the Red Sea, it wasn't because they were weak, it was because freedom was one step away. When the Philistines gathered their armies against David, it wasn't because he was failing, it was because his kingdom was about to be established forever. The warfare increases when the breakthrough is imminent. So if you've been feeling that crushing weight on your shoulders, if you've been battling thoughts that seem to come from nowhere, if you've been more tired than you've ever been in your life, listen to me carefully. That heaviness is not weakness. That pressure is not punishment. It's proof that you are in the fight heaven already marked as victory. Every chosen one across this nation is feeling it right now. In nursing homes in Florida, grandmothers are waking up at 3 a.m. with an inexplicable burden to pray. In retirement communities in Arizona, grandfathers are feeling a restlessness they can't explain. In small towns across the Midwest, seniors are experiencing a spiritual intensity they haven't felt in decades. You are not alone in this battle. You are part of a remnant that heaven is preparing for something unprecedented, and the enemy's desperate attempts to stop you are actually confirmation that your time has come. But here's the key. You cannot fight this battle with natural weapons. You cannot overcome spiritual warfare with positive thinking or self-help strategies. This is a battle that requires spiritual endurance. The kind of endurance that says, I will not be moved when everything around you is shaking. The kind of endurance that Daniel showed when he kept praying for 21 days, even though heaven seemed silent. The kind of endurance that David showed when he kept worshipping, even while running for his life. The kind of endurance that Job showed when he declared, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Your endurance is your weapon, chosen one. Every day you refuse to give up is another day you prove to hell that their attack has failed. Every morning you choose to seek God's face instead of giving in to discouragement is another victory in the invisible war. And the 29th of August, that day of sacred silence, is when your endurance transforms into triumph. If you've felt that weight I'm describing, if you recognize the spiritual battle I'm revealing, Comment, "I will endure," right now. Let heaven know that no matter what hell throws at you, you will not bow, you will not break, you will not back down. Because the war is almost over. And you, beloved, are about to discover what it means to be more than a conqueror. But first, you need to understand why your silence on the 29th of August will literally shift the balance of power in the spiritual realm. Dear chosen one, you've been asking the wrong question. For months, maybe years, you've been crying out, "God, why aren't you answering me?" But what if I told you that his silence isn't rejection, it's preparation for the most powerful release of your lifetime? Listen to me carefully. Every prophet in Scripture went through seasons of divine silence before their greatest breakthroughs. Moses wandered 40 years in the wilderness before he split the Red Sea. David hid in caves for years before he touched the throne. Joseph rotted in prison, forgotten and abandoned, before Pharaoh called his name and made him ruler of Egypt. The silence wasn't punishment, it was positioning. You see, beloved, there's something most Christians never understand about God's timing. When heaven goes quiet, it's not because God stopped caring. It's because he's about to do something so massive in your life that he needs you completely still, completely surrendered, completely aligned with his frequency before he can release it. Think about a bow and arrow. The archer doesn't pull the string back to hurt the arrow. He pulls it back to give it power. The further back it goes, the greater the distance it will travel when released. Your silence, your waiting, your feeling forgotten, that's not abandonment. That's divine tension being built for maximum impact. But here's what will shock you. On the 29th of August, that bowstring reaches its full tension. Every decision you make on this day is amplified. Heaven is magnifying your yes or your no, your obedience or your rebellion, your faith or your doubt. This isn't just another Tuesday in your golden years. This is the day your spiritual trajectory gets locked in for the next chapter of your life. Let me ask you something that might cut deep. How many years have you spent trying to force doors open that God was keeping closed? How many nights have you wrestled with him, demanding he move on your timeline, in your way, according to your understanding? But what if those closed doors weren't God saying no to you? What if they were God saying, "Not yet, beloved. You're not ready for what I'm about to give you"? Abraham was 75 when God first promised him nations would come from his loins. But Isaac wasn't born until Abraham was 100 years old. 25 years of waiting. 25 years of Sarah's barren womb mocking God's promise. 25 years of wondering if they heard wrong. But Genesis 21:2 declares, Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the time of which God had spoken to him. At the time, not early, not late, at the exact moment heaven had appointed. The 29th of August is your at the time moment. You know what terrifies the enemy about this day? It's not your prayers, it's not your good works, it's not even your faith. What terrifies hell is your alignment. Because when you finally stop fighting God's timing and start flowing with it, you become unstoppable. Ecclesiastes 3:1 tells us, "To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven." But here's what most people miss. The Hebrew word for time there is eth. It means the right time, the appointed time, the moment when heaven and earth collide for maximum impact. The 29th of August is your eth moment. But you have to understand something crucial about this divine alignment. It's not automatic. It requires your participation. It demands your choice. Right now, at this very second, you're standing at a crossroads. You can return to yesterday's patterns, the complaining, the doubt, the endless questioning of God's goodness. Or you can step into tomorrow's possibilities. Do you return to yesterday or step into tomorrow? Listen to what's happening in your spirit right now as these words penetrate your heart. Can you feel that stirring, that quickening, that sense that something ancient is awakening inside you? That's not emotion, that's recognition. Your soul recognizing the sound of its own name being called from the throne room of heaven. For 60, 70, 80 years you've been carrying something, a burden, a calling, a purpose that seemed too big for your circumstances, too grand for your limitations, too impossible for your age. But what if I told you that burden wasn't meant to crush you? It was meant to prepare you for this moment, when God finally says, now. Now is when I use everything I've put you through. The Apostle Paul understood this mystery when he wrote in Romans 8:28, all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. Not some things, all things, even the heartbreak, even the disappointment, even the years you felt forgotten. It was all working together for this moment of alignment. But here's the urgency you need to grasp. This window won't stay open forever. Divine appointments have divine timing. When Esther was called for such a time as this, she couldn't delay. When the disciples heard, follow me, they couldn't negotiate. When Mary heard, you will conceive, she couldn't postpone. Your for such a time as this moment is here. The question that will determine your destiny is this. Will you align with heaven's agenda, or will you keep clinging to your own understanding? When the silence breaks, and it will break on the 29th of August, your life will not go back to normal. It will split into before and after. Before alignment and after alignment. Before surrender and after surrender. Before breakthrough and after breakthrough. The archer's hand is trembling on the bowstring. The moment of release is here. Are you ready to fly? You know what breaks my heart? It's sitting across from a 7-8-year-old grandmother in Queens last month, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks, whispering, Pastor, I think God forgot about me. My husband's gone. My children barely call. I sit in that empty house wondering if my best days died with him. Dear one, if that's your story, if you've been convinced that your season of blessing has passed, if you believe that at 65, 70, 80 years old, you're just waiting for heaven while earth has nothing left for you, I need you to hear what the Spirit whispered to my heart at 3 a.m. this morning. Your mourning is about to become dancing. Your ashes are about to become a crown. And the 29th of August, it's not about your retirement, it's about your reignition. Listen to what God promised through the prophet Isaiah in chapter 61, verse 3. To give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. Did you catch that? To give, not might give, not could give, will give. Present tense, active promise, guaranteed exchange. But here's what most preachers won't tell you about this scripture. It's not talking about dying and going to heaven someday. It's talking about divine reversal happening right here, right now, in your living room, in your kitchen, in the very place where you've been crying out, how long, Lord? You see, beloved, God doesn't just comfort you in your pain. He converts it. He doesn't just heal your wounds. He transforms them into weapons. He doesn't just restore what was lost. He multiplies it beyond your wildest imagination. Think about Job for a moment. This man lost everything, his children, his wealth, his health, his reputation. His wife told him to curse God and die. His friends accused him of hidden sin. He sat in ashes, scraping his sores with broken pottery, wondering if God had abandoned him completely. But here's what Job didn't know while he was suffering. God was preparing the greatest comeback in biblical history. Job 42:10 tells us, And the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Twice as much. Not just restoration, multiplication. How many of you right now are living in your Job chapter? How many of you have been scraping wounds with broken pieces of your former life, wondering if God remembers your address? The silence you've been experiencing isn't God's absence, it's His preparation room. While you've been crying, where are you, Lord? He's been in heaven's vault, preparing your exchange. Every tear you've shed has been bottled. Every prayer you've whispered has been recorded. Every sleepless night has been noted in His ledger. And on the 29th of August, that vault opens. But let me tell you something that's going to shock you to your core. You think your greatest losses disqualify you from God's greatest blessings. You think because you buried your spouse, because your children moved away, because your body isn't what it used to be, because your bank account doesn't have enough zeros, you think that means God's finished with you. That's the biggest lie hell ever told you. Ruth was a widow, childless, foreign, poor. By every earthly standard, she had nothing to offer. But God saw something different. Ruth chapter 4 tells us she became the great-grandmother of King David, and in the lineage of Jesus Christ himself. Her greatest loss became the doorway to her greatest legacy. Moses was 80 years old when God called him from the burning bush. 80. When most people are thinking about assisted living, God was thinking about supernatural living. When the world saw an old stuttering shepherd, heaven saw the deliverer of nations. Anna, the prophetess, was 84 when she recognized baby Jesus in the temple. 84 years old. While others saw just another elderly woman, God saw the voice that would proclaim the Messiah to all Jerusalem. Your age isn't your expiration date, it's your activation code. Here's what's happening in the silence of the 29th of August. God is making the exchange. He's taking every year you felt invisible and trading it for influence. He's taking every night you cried alone and converting it into authority to comfort others. He's taking every closed door and transforming it into wisdom that opens ways for the next generation. The silence isn't empty space, beloved. It's loaded space. It's the moment between the lightning and the thunder. It's the pause before the shout that brings down walls. It's the stillness before the earthquake that shifts everything. In that holy quiet, heaven is depositing what hell tried to steal. While you've been mourning what was lost, God has been manufacturing what's about to be found. While you've been grieving your yesterdays, He's been preparing your tomorrows. But here's the key: you have to participate in the exchange. You can't just passively wait for blessing to fall on you like rain. You have to actively receive it. You have to declare it. You have to speak it into existence with the same authority that spoke worlds into being. The woman with the issue of blood didn't just hope for healing. She pressed through the crowd and grabbed hold of Jesus' garment. The Canaanite woman didn't just wish for her daughter's deliverance. She persisted until Jesus said, "Great is thy faith, be it unto you." Right now, in this very moment, I need you to do something that might feel uncomfortable but is absolutely necessary. I need you to stop accepting loss as your portion and start declaring exchange as your promise. Say it out loud. Wherever you are, I receive my exchange. Say it again. Beauty for my ashes, joy for my mourning, praise for my heaviness. Don't just think it, speak it. Don't just hope it, declare it. Because on the 29th of August, when heaven opens that vault of divine reversal, you need to have your hands open to receive what's been prepared for you since before time began. But what happens if you miss this moment? What if you let doubt rob you of the very exchange that could rewrite your entire story? Beloved chosen one, as we come to the end of this sacred encounter, I need you to hold on to 3 eternal truths that will anchor your soul in the days ahead. First, the 29th of August is not just another date on your calendar, it's your divine appointment with destiny. The silence you've been experiencing isn't God's absence, but His preparation room where your greatest exchange is being prepared. Every tear you've cried, every sleepless night you've endured, every moment you felt forgotten, none of it was wasted. It was all working together for your good. Second, your age is not your limitation, it's your qualification. While the world sees your gray hair and thinks decline, heaven sees your silver crown and recognizes authority. Moses was 80, Anna was 84, Job received double at the end of his life. Your best days aren't behind you, they're being downloaded from heaven's vault right now. Third, the great exchange isn't just biblical history, it's your present reality. Beauty for ashes, joy for mourning, praise for despair. God doesn't just restore what was lost, He multiplies it beyond your imagination. Your mourning season is ending, and your dancing season is about to begin. But I need you to know something deeper than knowledge, something that settles in your bones. You are not walking this path alone. Even when the house feels empty, even when the phone doesn't ring, even when you wonder if anyone remembers your name, the God who numbers every hair on your head is orchestrating every detail of your breakthrough. He hasn't brought you this far to abandon you now. And beyond God's presence, you have a community right here. Look at these comments. See these hearts connecting. Feel these spirits resonating. Thousands of believers just like you, carrying the same hope, fighting the same battles, believing for the same breakthroughs. We're not just viewers on a screen, we're family in the spirit. Share what God spoke to your heart today in the comments below. Tell us what you're believing Him for in this season of exchange. Ask for prayer. This community will surround you with intercession. And if this message touched your soul, share it with someone who needs to remember they're not forgotten, they're not finished, and their greatest chapter may be just one silent moment away. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Thank you for opening your heart to receive what heaven wanted to pour into you today. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because your breakthrough journey is just beginning, and I want to walk with you every step of the way. Now, before you go anywhere, before you return to your day, let me place my hand on your shoulder through these words and pray over your life with the authority of someone who has walked with God through every season of life. Almighty Father, I lift up every precious soul who has heard this message today. Lord, you see them, not just their circumstances, but their potential, not just their past, but their promise, not just their tears, but their triumph that's coming. Right now, I speak life over their weary bones. I speak hope over their discouraged hearts. I speak breakthrough over every area where they've felt stuck. Father, let the 29th of August be their day of divine exchange. Let beauty arise from every ash they've walked through. Let joy flood every place where mourning has taken residence. Let praise break forth from every spirit that's been heavy with despair. God, open doors that no man can shut. Bring back what the enemy has stolen with interest. Restore the years the locusts have eaten. Give them dreams again. Give them purpose again. Give them the unshakable assurance that their story isn't over, it's just reaching its greatest climax. Surround them with your presence when loneliness tries to whisper lies. Fill their homes with your peace when anxiety knocks on their door. Strengthen their bodies when weakness tries to overwhelm them. And most of all, Father, let them feel your smile, your approval, your deep satisfaction with how they've carried what you've given them to bear. In Jesus' mighty name, I seal this prayer over their lives. Let your will be done, your kingdom come, your glory be revealed in and through them. Amen. The silence ends now, chosen one. Your exchange begins today. And nothing, absolutely nothing, will ever be the same.